continent of Europe is so wide, mein Herr. Not only up and down, but side to side, mein Herr. I couldn't ever cross it if I'd tried, mein Herr. But I do what I can, inch by inch, step by step, mile by mile, man by man.
ご機嫌いかがですか？渡辺Danです。1972 was an exciting year at the Academy Awards because there were two movies that were going loggerheads at one another. One of them was The Godfather, which was already well on its way to becoming the #1 movie of all time, narrowly nudging out Gone with the Wind and about to tackle Sound of Music. The other movie was an independent film, well, not quite 100% independent, but more independent than the studio-bound Godfather, done by Allied artists, and it was an adaptation of the musical Cabaret. In one of the biggest upsets in Academy history, Cabaret wound up winning most of the awards that year. The Godfather certainly won Best Picture and Best Actor, but Cabaret took away the other 8, including Best Director, Actress, Supporting Actor, cinematography, etc., etc. So it was a big deal. How does Cabaret pass the test of time all these many years later? Well, I'm going to have a controversial opinion here. I'm going to say it really doesn't. It's one of those movies that's interesting to look at, and it's fascinating to study, and every single moment of it, you can find something that's good about it. But when seen as a whole, when you put it all together, it's one of those movies that now feels disappointing. And while you're watching it, you might not fully comprehend why you're disappointed. So I'm going to try to analyze some of the challenges that they had with this piece of work and why today a lot of it remains interesting rather than invigorating or inspiring. First of all, it was based on a book by Christopher Isherwood, and Christopher Isherwood was a pioneering gay writer. He would write I Am a Camera about his experiences in Berlin during the very, very nascent years of Nazism. And one of the stories in the Berlin stories is about Sally Bowles, who is, quite frankly, an American prostitute who has come to Berlin and is trying to make her fortune as an actress, and if not that, then with hooking. And for the relatively repressed, if gay, Christopher, she represents kind of a role model of freedom that he's never allowed himself with his academia and his pretensions and his fear of his own sexuality to really explore. And the book had been transformed into a stage musical by John Kander and Fred Ebb, which at the time jettisoned much of the book. And it was Fosse and J. Preston Allen, who had written Hitchcock's Marnie and Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, to step in and try to bring the book back, because there was a feeling that as a stage show it was perhaps too stylized, too different, too out there to work, especially in a time when musicals were just flopping left and right, including Hello Dolly. So come on, this was a real risk. So they went back to the book, and they kept a lot of the numbers. And when it came time to cast, they took a risk. Judy Garland's daughter, Liza Minnelli, had emerged. She had starred in a number of movies, including The Sterile Cuckoo and Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon, and had starred on Broadway in Flora the Red Menace, and had really started making a mark for herself. She performed with her mother and when she was first 14, and she was able to knock it out. So it was clear that she was a talent to be reckoned with. But in terms of something that was as challenging as Cabaret, it might have been difficult because she played quirky, she played innocent, and Sally Bowles is kind of a bitch and amoral, and in spite of the fact that Liza herself, like her mother, would have all sorts of trouble with narcotics and all of that. she never gave off that image that she was that kind of a person. She always gave off that persona of the sweet little girl next door. So how was that going to play? Well, they gave her the green fingernails, divine decadence, and they gave her exaggerated eyelashes and eye makeup, and they put her in numbers that were kind of, quite frankly, a little bit sexy for her image up to that point, and gave her a sexiness that for the 70s was appropriate, but from eras before and for our sensibilities today would never have been considered that. And it does work. She's so charismatic that we forget that she's such a great singer. And remember, Sally Bowles is performing in a dive bar, not unlike what Marlene Dietrich was performing in The Blue Angel. Perhaps that also hurts the film, because if Sally is as talented as Liza, and when she sings Maybe This Time, or Mein Herr, or the title song Cabaret, there's no doubt that she had star potential. And it's not just because of Weimar Germany that she wouldn't get a chance. Hell, if Lillian Harvey could go over there and become a star in the Congress dances, why not? So it's hard to suspend your disbelief for that. Plus, the movie was only 7 years out from the end of the production code, so there was still a lot of white-knuckling about certain topics. One of them would be, of course, the gayness of Isherwood. They could not allow that to happen.
Maybe you just don't sleep with girls. Oh, you don't? Well, listen, we're practically living together. So if you only like boys, I wouldn't dream of pestering you. Well, do you sleep with girls or don't you?
Sally, you don't ask questions like that.
I do.
In old classic Hollywood tradition, the Michael York character, who's Isherwood, is questioning. Yes, he does have an affair with a very attractive Helmut Graham, who was escaping at this point from the reputation he had of being the ultimate Nazi in Visconti's The Damned. And you saw the two of them feeling guilty about their relationship with each other, feeling that they were doing something wrong. So, of course, that's something that moderns look at and get all freaked out about and will condemn the movie. But come on, again, 7 years out of The Sound of Music and the end of the production code. 2 years out, well, 3 years out from Matthew Crawley's Boys in the Band getting adapted for a feature film. So it was still new times. It was still an uncomfortable subject, and it wasn't something that an American filmmaker felt 100% comfortable with. So I'm gonna put a pin in that one and say, okay, that's an issue in it that is problematic for today's eyes, to the point where it's very distracting. Another issue is that when we leave the cabaret, when we leave the stories about Liza, when Liza's not on screen, commanding it, similarly to her mom, you really feel the hole in the film. There's secondary characters. There's Marissa Berenson, who plays the daughter of a very, very wealthy department store family. And she's in love with a poor man who turns out to also be Jewish, so they end up getting married just as the Nazis are coming to power. The Nazis kill her dog. Again, I don't like movies where animals are killed, but that story is dull. You really, when you see Marissa Berenson and Fritz Weber coming on screen, you're just like, oh, please stop. It's boring. The story for the third act takes a turn that I find the most problematic part of it. And that is that after they break up with the Baron, because he's sleeping with both of them, Liza Minnelli realizes that she's pregnant. And she and Michael York don't know what to do. And they decide that they're going to go ahead and have the baby, that she's going to somehow settle down and be a mother. He's going to, maybe work harder as a teacher, but somehow they'll make it work. Somehow they'll give it that old college try. But Liza Minnelli, coming home after a performance at the nightclub, sees a kid alone on the stairway and realizes that that's what's going to happen to the kid. She also realizes that she is not good mother material. She is still too selfish. So she sells her mink coat, has an abortion, and ultimately that's the reason why Michael York breaks up with her. They realize it's never going to work out. And okay, that's a realistic 70s kind of ending where you don't have that Hollywood happiness. And my challenge with that is that outside of the fact that Liza Minnelli was such a life force, that she was so exciting, I don't like anyone in the movie. I found Michael York boring. I found him not particularly interesting in his sexual struggle. I liked Maximilian, but we didn't really go into his private life too much. So okay, so all we have is Liza, and at the end she gives this knockout performance.
What good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret.
And then she disappears, and we go back to our MC, Joel Grey. He's the other part of this movie that I think keeps it memorable and doesn't make it one of those Academy Award winners like Greatest Show on Earth, where you just rather remember it or rather pretend it never happened. He plays the MC, and it's a role. When I first saw the film, of course I was all of 9 years old, so what did I know? When I first saw the film, I didn't understand. I thought he was creepy. I thought he was scary. It didn't scare me because, of course, I was a bloody little kid who liked violent horror movies at that point. But I didn't get how cleverly Fosse was using him as a sign of how Nazism was slowly taking over. And even a place like the nightclub was no longer safe. And at the end, he's become a member of National Socialism. And so we get to see that creeping evil. Nonetheless, as it ends, while I think even today we're kind of dazzled by what the film did artistically, we still remain distant and remote from it emotionally.
Auf Wiedersehen. A bientôt.